My name is Rafael Schvartzman. I'm the Regional Vice President for Europe for IATA, the International Air Transport Association. I actually started right after the university. I started my career in Ecuador, in South America, right? And I ended up working with a group of companies where they had, airline business plus tourism industry. So I was kind of in between both of them, working in the financial area. And the airline at the end developed it into a regional one, went all around South America, plus many places in the US. So I ended up learning a lot about the airline industry there, basically. But at the same time, they had a travel industry business where, just travel agency business. So I was aware of what was happening in the travel industry also. And I did that for quite a while, right, with, experiences basically all over the world because, airline business is a global business. And then actually I changed careers. At one point I went and joined the other side of the business, which is the cargo business, and I joined DHL, right? And I worked for DHL basically in the Latin American area for quite a few years, more than 10. And that's when I was recruited by IATA to join their team in Latin America. And then from then, of course, I was moved later to Europe to be heading Europe, basically. As a trade body, we represent the air transport industry, right? We have about 240 members. These 240 members, of course, and this is what most people know, represent about 85% of the world traffic, scheduled traffic. And of course, we work in multiple areas for the benefit of the industry. One area which is very important for the industry beyond the air transport, meaning affecting all of us as passengers or anybody using the industry, is setting certain standards, right? As an example, setting standards as simple as the e-ticketing standard, right? The standard set up by IATA is the one that facilitated the penetration or the implementation of e-ticketing. So we work on setting standards, we work on safety standards, right? We do have the IATA Operational Safety Audit, IOSA, which is mandated to all members. But today we have a large pool of non-members who are also IOSA, right? And that has been so successful that we also work with civil aviation authorities to use the audit findings of the IOSA audits to help in the certification process instead of doubling the requirements for airlines to be certified, for example. So these are another type of standards besides just the ticketing one, right? Of course, we do advocacy for the industry in terms of environment, in terms of taxation. We also provide consulting services, right? So it's a quite diverse scope, right, that we cover. We believe very much that aviation is a force for good in the world, right? It's strategically important to all of us. And actually in Europe, we have seen that when the famous volcano erupted and the whole continent was stopped, right? So aviation is growing healthy worldwide in terms of passenger growth, right? We see that is, especially in the developing countries, we see a huge demand for it, right? And therefore we have a few areas where we are focusing on, and there are no trade secrets in that area, basically, in those areas. We are focusing a lot on the new distribution capabilities because the systems today is that we have that run the business, let's say the reservation system, distribution systems, are standards that were set basically 40 years ago, right? And now you already have, the retail web business already has enough technology that allows you to actually see products, differentiate products, or be able to see a much better representation of what you're going to get than what you get when you are buying an airline ticket, except when you do maybe a direct sales, right, from a web. So we are having a big initiative in terms of the new distribution capabilities, and this is a long-term project that we are just there to set up the standards. Then the rest, the development, is up to the technology companies, right? That's one important area. So one area of long-term impact and very important for IATA is the environment. And we have been working as an industry with all the bodies, government bodies, on it, but we already have an agreement and a compromise from the industry to grow zero growth on carbon emission as of 2020. and a 50% reduction by 2050 of our carbon emissions compared to 2005 carbon emissions. So it's a tough target actually that we're working on with, of course, the whole industry, right? Aircraft manufacturers, engine manufacturers, and authorities and so on. So that's another area which is very, very critical for us. And of course, advocacy and coordinating and working with authorities and airports in terms of capacity, the challenges with taxes and charges. So those are many of the very, very critical areas that we're focusing on. Well, one which is very publicly known is the consolidation, of course, right? We see the need to further consolidate the industry to become more efficient, right? Because it's an industry that in the whole value chain only makes the lowest return on investment, right? And it barely covers, well, it doesn't actually cover the cost of capital probably, right? So that's a very important trend. Also, the need for liberalization, which is in some areas is showing to be very, very positive, right? So we see that as a trend, but still a challenging one. And definitely we see, the passengers are, the passengers are becoming global and mobile, right? So this is a non-stoppable trend, and we have to just, be able to accompany it. Definitely we do focus on the customers of our customer, because at the end, if we help them, we have our members, right? So we do focus on them, and part of that is our multiple initiatives that we have already in place, because like fast travel, for example, because passengers want to have ownership of their journey, right? We are all mobile now. We all have a mobile phone where we want to use it for everything, right? So we are also aligned to that in terms of streamlining the whole process for passengers. You do your own e-ticketing, your boarding passes now, but you can do also self-boarding, right? Those are things that we're working on, and we have already some very successful cases. You can do your own home printed bag tags, right? So you don't need to go to the airport and do all that. You just print your bag tag and drop it somewhere else. So that's what the customer is wanting, I guess, self-control of a more control of the journey that they are. So we are working on those areas. Also, we need to, they would like to simplify the whole process of security, for example, and they have a better experience, because that's probably the most delicate one. And we already have an initiative there, which we are working with governments and airports on that, which is called Checkpoint of the Future. And then also I would say we are, as part of our passenger facilitation, is trying to work with government to implement automatic border controls, right? Which also makes the journey quite much nicer when you arrive to a destination and don't have to wait 20 minutes to half an hour just to get through immigrations, right? We have spoken before that the growth of this industry is very solid, let's say, is very good in the future. But we also see that there is a tendency to continue to either tax or charge the industry in excess, right? So this is a very big concern, because it makes, it has an impact on the decision of somebody going somewhere or not, a decision on the travel itself. So taxation is a big concern of ours. Another one is infrastructure. How is the infrastructure going to cope with this growth, right? How is the infrastructure going to cope with the growth that the industry is having? So we already see, basically in Europe, a constraint in capacity, right? And in that area, we're working with airports, of course, with governments and all that, to make sure that that capacity is there, but is there at a reasonable cost, because otherwise it becomes impossible to financially sustain it. At the same time, if you think that we are growing, then you have to take control of how do you manage that growth in the air, which is air traffic management. So we think there is a lot of work to be done in terms of air traffic management, and the examples are the implementation of the single European sky in the case of Europe, but also you have next gen in the US. And they are really needed if you want to be able to sustain the growth of the industry. But these are areas of concern to be able to continue this growth. Aviation, air transport, or even tourism is a passionate, I think it's a fabulous industry, right? It allows you to see the world, It allows you to see multiple cultures, so it's fascinating. You know, I think people get enticed by it, but it is also a very demanding one, right? It is a very challenging industry. Therefore, you need to be very prepared. You need to be resilient, right? It's not a quick win type of a thing. It's not. It requires a lot of personal dedication and attention because you have to interact with individuals and not just with machines, I would say. So, you know, prepare, be open-minded, be resilient. But it's a beautiful industry, but it's challenging. I think as an industry, the biggest highlight, I would say, and that's the one we are proud of, is the agreement that was achieved in ICAO recently in the summit, where I think we are probably the only industry worldwide which has agreed on a measure to take care of our carbon emissions worldwide, right? So that's a big achievement. It's not a minor achievement to be able to agree at a forum like ICAO, which is all the countries of the world, basically civil aviation authorities there, plus the industry, and coming up with this, I would say, huge agreement, right? So because that's going to be a huge impact also in the future for all of us. And we are taking responsibility action into it. So I think at IATA, we're very proud of it.